Hey everyone, if you're getting ready for the LECPA, you know there are some topics that are just guaranteed to show up. And today, we're going to crack one of the big ones: how to fairly split up costs and revenue. Seriously, this isn't just about passing an exam. It's a skill you are going to use for your entire career. So let's get into it and make sure this stuff sticks. Okay, let's start with the situation you've probably thought about before. Picture this. You and a friend share a chartered flight to get to different job interviews. So how do you split the bill? Seems easy, right? But that little word, fairly, well, that's where things get really interesting in accounting. So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to start with that flight problem, then dive into the two main pro-level methods for solving it. After that, we'll see how this whole thing plays out in the real world with some super high-stakes contracts. Then we'll flip it and talk about revenue. And of course, we'll finish up with a simple brain hack so you can nail this on exam day. All right, section 1. Let's really dig into this flight problem and see how a simple, everyday question about being fair actually builds up into a core principle of accounting. So, in accounting speak, this shared flight cost is what we call a common cost. It's really just any cost that's shared by more than one person or department. The whole puzzle, and the reason it's a big deal on your exam, is figuring out a reasonable, logical way to slice up that cost. Okay, let's put some actual numbers on this. The shared flight cost a total of $1,500. Now, if you had flown to Albany by yourself, it would have been $1,200. And a solo trip to Chicago, $800. Add those two up, and you get $2,000. So by sharing, you guys saved $500. The entire allocation problem is about this right here. How do you split that $500 savings in a way that you both agree is fair? So how do we actually do this? Well, lucky for us, we don't have to just guess. Accountants have two primary playbooks for this exact situation, and yeah, you're going to need to know both of them like the back of your hand. And check this out, because these two methods come from completely different ways of thinking. The standalone method, it treats everyone as equals. It splits the cost based on what their proportional share would have been. But the incremental method, it's totally different. It creates a ranking system. There's a primary user, and then there's everyone else who's kind of just tagging along. As you're about to see, the method you choose changes the answer completely. Let's crunch the numbers for the standalone method first. Remember, the total individual costs were $2,000. The Albany trip alone was $1,200, which is 60% of that total. So under this method, the Albany employer pays 60% of the actual $1,500 cost, which is $900. The Chicago employer pays the other 40%, or $600. See? It's clean, it's proportional, and a lot of people would argue it's the most fair way to do it. But now, watch what happens when we use the incremental method. For this to work, we have to rank the users. Let's decide that the person going to Albany is the primary user. They get hit with their full standalone cost, $1,200. That leaves $300 left over from the total bill, right? Well, that's what the incremental user, the person going to Chicago, has to pay. It's a completely different result. And it just goes to show you, with this method, who you decide is primary is everything. Okay, I know what some of you might be thinking. This feels kind of like a textbook problem, right? But I promise you, this exact decision, which method to use, has massive, massive consequences in the real world. We're talking billions of dollars on the line, especially with government contracts. And this is where it gets super real. For huge companies that work with, say, the Department of Defense, cost allocation isn't just an academic exercise. It's everything. These are examples of actual cases where the entire dispute, sometimes worth millions and millions of dollars, came down to which cost allocation method was used. So here's the inside scoop on why this is such a big deal. The government often uses something called cost-plus contracts. Basically, they agree to pay a company for its costs plus a little extra for profit. But, and this is a huge but, they have a whole rulebook on what costs they will actually reimburse. It's all laid out by the Cost Accounting Standards Board. If you pick an allocation method that they think is unfair or unreasonable, they can just straight up refuse to pay part of the bill, and that could cost your company millions. Okay, so you're now a master of allocating costs. So let's flip the script. We're going to take the exact same logic and apply it to revenue. This is all about what we call bundled products, and you guessed it, it's another huge topic for the LECPA. Think about a company that sells a software bundle. You know, you pay one price and you get a word processor and a spreadsheet program. How does that company know which product is the real moneymaker? Well, they have to allocate that bundle price back to the individual products. Using that same standalone approach we talked about, they could do it based on what each program would sell for individually, what each one costs to make, or they could just split it 50-50 based on physical units. And just look at how much the answer changes depending on the method you choose. If you go by selling price, it looks like Finance Master is the star player. But if you just split it by physical units, they look exactly the same. And this is not just a numbers game, you guys. This decision determines which product manager gets a bonus, which products get more marketing dollars, and maybe even which products get discontinued. It is a huge deal. Okay, we have covered a ton of ground. Now it's time to make sure it all sticks in your brain. Let's simplify everything with some super easy analogies and a quick final review so you're 100% ready for any question the exam throws at you. Here it is, your official brain hack to remember this forever. The standalone method is the fair share method. Just think of everyone paying for their proportional slice of the pizza. The incremental method? That's the piggyback method. One person pays for the main ride and the other person just pays a little extra to piggyback along. Fair share versus piggyback. That's it. It's that simple. All right, time for the final lightning round. These are the absolute non-negotiables you have to know. A common cost is just a shared cost. The standalone method, think fairness and proportions. The incremental method, ranking is everything. Bundled revenue is just the same principles but flipped. And why does it matter? Because it hits everything. Contracts, profits, and even how people's jobs are evaluated. Go ahead and screenshot this slide. Trust me, you'll thank me later. So I'll leave you with one final question to think about. The textbooks and the review materials can give you the formulas, but out there in the real world, which method is truly the fairest? The truth is, there's often no single right answer. It depends on the situation, the people involved, and ultimately your judgment as an accountant. And that's exactly what makes this job both a science and an art. Thanks so much for tuning in.